Canada, Our Neighbors to the North by Uday Kalra, Adrian Liu, and Michael Zhu.
Falling sea levels allowed people to walk across the Bering Land Bridge, where they were met with the Laurentide ice sheets, which covered most of Canada. Once it melted, people were able to move by land south and east into Canada. They stayed there, minding their own business, even creating a native language called Algonquin, which included Mi'kmaq and Abenaki regions of Canada. Prior to European arrival, the Norse, who had settled in Greenland and Iceland, arrived in the 11th century and built small settlements. Italian John Cabot became the first European known to have landed in Canada, and he and his son continued to voyage to find the Northwest Passage. The land discovered by John Cabot had been claimed for England on behalf of King Henry VII, but these lands were not enforced and were not colonized. This allowed the French to swoop right in and establish this land as Canada. Initial settlement attempts were failures. However, they began trading and making alliances with First Nations, or the natives. There was a lot of prosperity and trading, and also a lot of dispute that occurred within these lands. One of the earliest permanent settlements by Champlain was Quebec City, which would become the capital city of New France. The English soon after established claims and established permanent settlements in many parts of Newfoundland. After the death of Champlain, the Roman Catholic Church and Jesuit establishments became the dominant force in New France. Although immigration was low, many new arrivals were farmers, and the rate of population growth among the settlers were very, very high. Canadians were very prosperous. They had a natural abundance of meat, fish, and pure water. They had a good food conservation conditions during the winter and an adequate wheat supply. Though the land was quite rich in France, in the early 1700s, new arrivals slowed down, which allowed English and Scottish settlers in Newfoundland to outnumber the French population. The English laid many claims that established new trading posts and forts. Many wars occurred, such as the four French and Indian Wars, which consisted of the Battle of Port Royal, naval battle in the Bay of Fundy, raid of Chignecto, and the Battle of Hudson's Bay. After the 7 Years' War and the signing of the Treaty of Paris, France ceded almost all of the remaining territory in mainland North America. The new British rulers of Canada retained and protected most of the property, religious, political, and social culture of the French-speaking inhabitants, allowing them to practice the Catholic faith and use the French civil law. Canada suffered from many internal and external conflicts caused by the First World War, rebellions, the War of 1812, and the American Revolution. The culture of Canada is a term that embodies artistic, culinary, literary, musical, and humor elements that are representative of Canada and the Canadians. Throughout its history, its culture has been influenced by European culture and traditions, especially British and French, and its own indigenous cultures. Over time, elements of the cultures of Canada's immigrant population have become incorporated into mainstream Canadian culture. Ice hockey is Canada's most prevalent winter sport, its most popular spectator sport, and its most successful sport in international competition. Lacrosse is a sport that is derived from indigenous origins. Canadian cuisine varies widely depending on the region. The two most popular Canadian national foods are poutine and butter tarts. Poutine is thought to have originated in rural Quebec in the late 1950s. Often cited tales is that of Warwick restaurateur Fernand Lachance of Le Café Ideal, who was asked by a restaurant regular to put a handful of cheese curds on French fries. The name originated since Fernand Lachance exclaimed, "Que va faire un maudit poutine?" which means, "It will make a damn mess." This dish is significant since it has become the most popular snack food that has ever hit Canada.
Canada, much like America, hosts a wide array of religions. The largest religion in Canada is Christianity, which represents 67.3% of the population. This is broken up into two groups: Roman Catholicism and Christian minorities. The next largest group are those who don't go by any religion. This group covers 23.9% of Canada's population. The first Europeans to settle in great numbers in Canada were French Latin Rite Roman Catholics, including a large number of Jesuits who established several missions in North America. The Protestant communities were formed after Canada was conquered by the British. The British began to import continental Protestants from Germany and Switzerland to populate the region and counterbalance the Roman Catholic Acadians. Due to efforts by the British and the United States, which brought many immigrants, which were Protestant, led to Protestants covering 56.45% of the population and Roman Catholics only covering 42.8%. The government in Canada is set up as a constitutional monarchy under Queen Elizabeth II. However, the Queen does not directly rule the country herself. Instead, she has government officials who rule under her trust that they will meet the expectations of her position. Like America, the Canadian government is split into three branches: executive, legislative, and judicial. The executive branch is headed by the Prime Minister of Canada, who is the leader of the House of Commons and presides over cabinet meetings. The Prime Minister is chosen from the majority party in the House of Commons and stays in office until he is removed by the Governor-General or when his party loses a majority in a general election. The legislative branch mainly functions as Canadian Parliament. Parliament is a bicameral legislature split into the upper and lower houses, otherwise known as the Senate and the House of Commons. The 105 senators are appointed by the Governor-General with advice from the Prime Minister. There are 338 members of the House of Commons who are all elected by the Canadian populace in the general election every 4 years. All Canadian citizens above 18 are allowed to vote except for the Chief Electoral Officer, Deputy Chief Electoral Officer, and the Governor-General. Finally, the judicial branch is made up of Her Majesty's courts, with the Supreme Court of Canada as the highest form of judicial power. In Canada, citizens are granted many individual rights: voting rights, language rights, religious rights, freedom of speech, and etc. Individual freedoms is an important part of the Canadian Constitution, and it's the government's job to protect these freedoms.
The two official languages of Canada are English and French. In the 17th century, French colonists founded two colonies in North America, Acadia and New France. Acadia is now the maritime province of Nova Scotia, and New France became modern-day Quebec. Most of the Canadians who speak French as a mother language live in Quebec. However, in the rest of Canada, French speakers are steadily declining as the popularity of English rises. According to a Canadian census in 2011, 65% of Canadian households speak English as their primary language, compared to the 20% of households who primarily speak French. Canadian English is also quite different when compared to the American English that we are used to. For example, a sofa in America would be called a Chesterfield in Canada. Also, the word is used very frequently in casual conversations between Canadians. In Canada, you will often hear conversations such as, "Nice weather, eh?" Some important French phrases to remember are "Salut" and "Je m'appelle," meaning hello and my name is. Overall, in the entire globe, about 3% of people speak French and about 10% of people speak English. Canada appeals to many tourists with its natural attractions and gorgeous city views. Natural attractions include national parks such as Niagara Falls and skiing resorts such as the Whistler Village. Niagara Falls is a collective name for three connected waterfalls near the border of Ontario and New York. It is famous for its natural beauty and the variety of tourist activities that people can partake in. Tourists can go horseback riding, take a cruise, or even go swimming at the top of the waterfall. Niagara Falls has a 5-star tourist rating on TripAdvisor, but has a 4-star safety rating due to the danger of falling over the waterfall. Whistler Village gained worldwide attention when it was selected as one of the sites for the 2010 Winter Olympics. It is now a very popular skiing resort with world-class hotels, dining, and recreational activities. Whistler Village has a 4.5-star tourist rating and a 4-star safety rating, so it is definitely a must-see for skiers. Along with natural attractions, Canada is also famous for some of its city architecture and the beautiful city skylines. Toronto's CN Tower is one of the tallest structures in the world, at 553 meters. It is especially famous for its revolving restaurant, which provides a great view of both Toronto City and Lake Ontario. The CN Tower has a 4.5-star tourist rating on TripAdvisor and a 5-star safety rating. Finally, the most famous historical landmark is Old Quebec. Old Quebec is the site of the original French settlement and contains several historical treasures. Some of the most popular sites in Old Quebec are the Plains of Abraham, the Chateau Frontenac, and the Museum of Civilization. Old Quebec has a 4-star tourist rating and a 5-star safety rating. Tourists in Canada can look forward to beautiful natural attractions and the modern city skylines with lots of recreational activities. Overall, our rating for Canada would be a 4.5-star tourist rating and a 4.5-star safety rating, meaning that people should be very safe in Canada and should definitely visit Canada at least once in their lifetimes.